When you look up at the night sky, the brightest object you see, besides the moon, is a glowing white jewel. For thousands of years, humans have called it the morning star or the evening star, but today we know it as Venus. Now, the craziest thing is that Venus is often called Earth's twin because it is almost the exact same size and is made of the same rocky materials. This has led many to wonder if we could ever live there. But I have to tell you, the reality of Venus is far more terrifying than any horror movie you have ever seen. While everyone is talking about moving to Mars, Venus is the planet that holds a dark mirror to our own future. You see, there is a very scary truth that scientists are trying to understand. Venus might have once been just like Earth, with blue oceans and a breathable atmosphere. But something went horribly wrong. Today, it is a planet of extreme pressure and scorching heat that would kill you in a heartbeat. Now, you might be wondering, if it is so dangerous, why should we even care about landing there? Well, the answer blew my mind. By studying Venus, we are actually studying the fate of our own planet. If we want to prevent Earth from turning into a lifeless furnace, we have to understand what happened to our neighbor. But here's the problem. Landing on Venus is considered the most difficult mission in the history of space exploration. To understand why, imagine you are in a high-tech spacecraft approaching the planet. As you get closer, you won't see any continents or oceans. All you will see is a thick, yellowish layer of clouds that completely blankets the entire world. These are not normal water clouds like we have on Earth. These are clouds made of highly concentrated sulfuric acid. This acid is so strong that it can dissolve metal, skin, and bone in a matter of minutes. As your ship begins its descent, you hit the top of the atmosphere at thousands of miles per hour. The friction alone generates enough heat to turn your ship into a fireball. But that is just the beginning. As you sink deeper into the clouds, the sunlight begins to fade, replaced by a dim, eerie orange glow. This is where you realize that Venus is not just a planet, it is a planetary trap. Look, those clouds you are passing through right now aren't made of water vapor like the ones on Earth. They are thick, swirling masses of concentrated sulfuric acid. Think about that for a second. If even a tiny leak occurs in your spacecraft, this acid will start dissolving the metal, the glass, and eventually, your skin. It is one of the most corrosive environments in the entire solar system, and the further you go down, the crazier it gets. At about 50 kilometers above the surface, the temperature and pressure are actually somewhat Earth-like, but do not let that fool you. You cannot stay there. Gravity is pulling you down into a literal furnace. As you drop lower, the atmospheric pressure starts to build up. This is where things get really terrifying. On Earth, the air pressure at sea level is what our bodies are built for. But on Venus, the atmosphere is so thick that it acts more like a heavy fluid than air. By the time you get close to the surface, the pressure is 90 times higher than on Earth. To give you an idea of how intense that is, it is the same as being 3,000 feet deep under the ocean. Imagine taking a giant metal shipping container and letting it crush you from all sides. That is the kind of force we are talking about. Most modern submarines would be flattened like a soda can before they even touch the Venusian soil. And then there is the heat. Now, you might wonder why Venus is so much hotter than Mercury, even though Mercury is much closer to the sun. The answer is a runaway greenhouse effect. Venus has an atmosphere made of 96% carbon dioxide. This CO2 acts like a giant, suffocating thermal blanket, trapping all the sun's heat and never letting it escape. The average temperature is 465 degrees Celsius. That is hot enough to melt lead and turn zinc into liquid. If you tried to step out in a regular spacesuit, you would not just be hot, you would literally be incinerated in seconds. Even the most advanced probes sent by the Soviet Union, the Venera missions, only survived on the surface for about 2 hours before their internal components literally melted. This is why scientists call Venus Earth's evil twin. It is almost the same size as our planet, but it is a hellscape that defies imagination. To understand why Venus is so hostile, you have to look at its atmosphere. On Earth, we worry about rising CO2 levels. But on Venus, the atmosphere is 96% carbon dioxide. This has created a runaway greenhouse effect that turned the planet into a giant oven. Even though Mercury is closer to the Sun, Venus is actually hotter because its thick atmosphere acts like a heavy thermal blanket, trapping every bit of heat that enters. The heat doesn't just stay there. It builds up until the surface reaches that bone-melting 450 degrees Celsius. But let's say you had a magical suit that could protect you from the heat. Would you be safe? Absolutely not. The next thing that would kill you is the atmospheric pressure. Imagine diving deep into the Earth's ocean. As you go deeper, the weight of the water above you increases. On the surface of Venus, the air is so thick and heavy that it exerts a pressure 92 times greater than Earth's. This is equivalent to being 900 meters underwater on Earth. If you stepped out of your spacecraft, the weight of the atmosphere would crush your body instantly, like an aluminum can under a steamroller. Your bones would snap, and your lungs would collapse in less than a second. Now, imagine looking up through your reinforced helmet. You wouldn't see a blue sky or the sun. Instead, you'd be surrounded by a thick, yellowish-orange haze. The atmosphere is so dense that light bends in strange ways, making the horizon appear distorted, almost as if you're looking through a thick jar of honey. And then there are the clouds. Venus is covered in permanent layers of clouds made of sulfuric acid. While it does rain on Venus, the drops of acid never actually reach the ground. Because the surface is so hot, the rain evaporates mid-air before it can touch the rocks, creating a layer of acidic vapor that would dissolve your skin and eyes if you weren't protected. The winds are another story. In the upper atmosphere, winds howl at speeds of 360 kilometers per hour, circling the planet in just a few days. However, at the surface, the air is so heavy that the wind moves slowly, like a sluggish current at the bottom of the sea. But don't let that fool you. Because the air is so dense, even a slow breeze would feel like a powerful wave hitting you, making it almost impossible to keep your balance. This leads us to a very important question. If the surface is so deadly, why are scientists still so obsessed with this planet? The obsession boils down to a single, haunting realization. Venus is our future if we aren't careful. Scientists believe that for nearly 2 billion years, Venus had liquid water oceans and a climate very similar to Earth's. It was the original habitable planet in our solar system. But then, something went horribly wrong. A runaway greenhouse effect took hold, where the heat from the sun got trapped, the oceans boiled away, and the planet literally cooked itself from the inside out. By studying Venus, we are looking into a mirror of what could happen to Earth if our atmosphere changes too much. This is why upcoming missions are so crucial. They are like forensic investigators trying to solve the mystery of a murdered planet. But there is another reason we are so interested, and it's hidden high above those scorching plains. If you travel about 50 kilometers up into the atmosphere, the environment changes completely. In this sweet spot, the atmospheric pressure is almost identical to Earth's at sea level. The temperature drops to a comfortable 20 to 50 degrees Celsius. It is, quite literally, the most Earth-like place in the entire solar system. This has led to the incredible concept of cloud cities. NASA has even explored a project called Havoc, which envisions giant, solar-powered airships floating in the Venusian sky. Because the air on Venus is so heavy, a balloon filled with breathable oxygen and nitrogen would actually float just like a helium balloon does on Earth. You wouldn't even need a heavy, pressurized spacesuit to survive outside your cabin. You just need an oxygen tank and a suit that is resistant to the sulfuric acid mist. And this leads to the most controversial discovery in recent years. Researchers have detected traces of phosphine gas in these temperate clouds. On a rocky planet like Venus, there is no known chemical way to create phosphine naturally, except through the presence of anaerobic life. This suggests that while the surface is a graveyard, the clouds might be home to colonies of floating microbes. We might be searching for Martians in the red dust, while the real aliens are floating right next door in the clouds of Venus. But even if we find life or build these floating cities, there is one massive hurdle that remains. If you ever decided to go down to the surface for a closer look, how would you ever get back home? Look, leaving Mars is relatively easy because the atmosphere is thin. But leaving Venus? That is a whole different story. To get back to space from the surface of Venus, you would need a rocket just as powerful as the ones we use on Earth. But there is a huge problem. The air on Venus is so thick that it is basically a fluid. Trying to launch a rocket through that is like trying to fly a plane through a pool of honey. The friction and pressure would be so intense that most rockets would simply break apart before they even reach the clouds. This is why many scientists believe that if we ever send humans to the surface, it might truly be a one-way trip. And that brings us to the most important question. If Venus is such a hellish nightmare, why do we care so much about it? The answer is both fascinating and terrifying. You see, billions of years ago, Venus might have been just like Earth. It likely had liquid water oceans, a blue sky, and a moderate temperature. But something went wrong. A runaway greenhouse effect took over, trapping heat until the oceans boiled away and the rocks themselves started releasing poisonous gases. Venus is not just another planet, it is a warning. It is a glimpse into a future where the balance of an atmosphere is completely destroyed. By studying Venus, we are not just looking at a dead world, we are learning how to save our own. In the next decade, NASA and other space agencies are sending new missions like Da Vinci and Veritas to peel back those thick clouds and finally see what lies beneath. We are on the verge of discovering if life ever existed there, or if it is still hiding in the clouds today. The journey to Venus is the ultimate test of human ingenuity. It is a place that pushes our technology to the absolute limit. So, would you ever take the risk? Would you board a ship to live in a floating city above the deadliest planet in the solar system? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey to the surface of Venus, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more mind-blowing space explorations. The universe is full of mysteries, and we are just getting started.